Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Proverbial Perspectives. I am Simran.
And I'm Yazhini. Today we're going to be discussing a really important topic, aren't we, Simran?
Yeah,
And it's relevant to all our lives and more importantly, all our futures, and that is sustainability. It's on everyone's mind these days, from climate change discussions to everyday choices like recycling and energy usage.
so let's get started with our first proverb. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children.
I absolutely love this proverb. It flips the script on how we think about ownership and responsibility, doesn't it? Instead of seeing Earth as something that we outright own, it positions us as caretakers who are responsible for preserving it for future generations.
Exactly. It emphasizes intergenerational responsibility. Our actions today directly impact the kind of world our children and grandchildren will live in. In terms of sustainability, this means making conscious choices that may not benefit us immediately but will have long term positive effects.
Like reducing our carbon footprint, supporting renewable energy, and advocating for policies that protect the environment.
It's a powerful reminder that sustainability isn't just about the here and now, it's about the legacy we leave behind.
Well said. And now on to our second proverb, which is waste not, want not.
A classic. This proverb teaches us the importance of resource conservation.
Exactly. If we avoid wasting resources, we'll have enough to meet our own needs. It's about mindful consumption.
In today's context, it speaks to reducing waste, reusing materials, and recycling, core principles of sustainable living.
Yes, and it also touches on food wastage and energy efficiency and even time management.
True, by valuing what we have, we reduce the strain on the planet's resources.
And that contributes to a more sustainable and equitable world for everyone to live in.
Absolutely. Now, our third proverb is the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Isn't that just incredibly motivating? Yes, let's acknowledge missed opportunities, but let's also focus and encourage immediate action.
Right. It tells us that it's never too late to start making a positive change.
And every small step counts towards the larger impact. And collectively, these actions can lead to a significant change in our communities and beyond. These proverbs that we've discussed today, they give us a moral and ethical framework for approaching sustainability.
And speaking of taking action, we are excited to introduce our special guest for today's episode.
Yes, we are interviewing Libby Hogarth. She's the manager of sustainability strategy at our university. I promise you, it's going to be an enlightening conversation. So, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. How about we start off with you introducing yourself and your role in the university?
Of course. My name's Libby Hogarth and I'm the manager of sustainability strategy. My role is designed to set the direction for the university's sustainability agenda and coordinate effort across the university and also report on how we're tracking. So this means that I'm involved in a lot of activity across the universities and work with lots of different people from various areas to deliver on the sustainability goals that the university has.
And how did you first get involved in the sustainability and environmental initiatives in the university?
I've been working in this field for 15 years now. It feels like it doesn't feel that long though, because we've done quite a lot in that time. So my role began in a compliance sort of sector. So I was really looking at making sure the university had all the proper licenses and was reporting to environmental regulators as it should be. Then I sort of moved into carbon accounting. So we create a inventory of the university's carbon emissions every year. And that's been a huge piece of work to collect all that data. And it's a piece of work that we that evolves every year as new emission sources are found and I guess sites move in and out of our boundary. And then I moved into the infrastructure branch. So from there, I worked on quite a number of business cases and sustainability projects that reduce our carbon emissions on campus, and I can talk to you more about some of those a bit later. And now, just recently, I've moved back into the Chief Operating Officer's office, and from here I'm really providing more of that strategic direction and looking at our strategy as we move into the new Adelaide University, and working, and I guess just taking charge of some of the larger targets that we have in the strategy around achieving our net zero target, for example.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's very obvious that your career has had multiple facets to it just within this area that you're pursuing. And I can see that the university has been implementing sustainability strategies for a long period of time. It's not something that's very recent. Can you share with us some of the key goals of the university's sustainability strategy?
Absolutely. The strategy has 6 key goals. So the first one's around learning and teaching. So we really wanted to make sure that no matter what you were studying here at the University of Adelaide, that you would come out as a graduate with an understanding of how your profession could help solve climate change problems. My understanding is that we'll all be impacted by the effects of climate change in one way or another. And so whether you're a lawyer, an engineer, an architect, a health professional, you're going to have to need to respond in some way.
Yeah.
So that was the first goal, embedding sustainability throughout the curriculum. The second goal was really around research and innovation. So this is where we target and support researchers who are developing adaptation or new technologies, new ideas, new ways of doing business, so that as a whole we can respond to climate change in a more moderated way, I guess. So research and innovation is really about supporting our community to respond to climate change better and to take on some of those opportunities that it presents, because it's not always a bad thing or an issue. Yes, there are a lot of problems that we need to solve, but there's also a lot of opportunity in that as well. So that's really where the research and innovation part comes in, really supporting researchers in doing that. And also part of that is creating living labs, so looking at where we can demonstrate these technologies to invite members of the community to come onto campus, or even members of industry, to see what the university is doing and to test some of these technologies and try and see them in practice so that they can understand how they might work in their local community. The third goal is called Leading Transitions, which is a lovely 2 words for decarbonisation. So this is where we really hone in on the operations of the university, and we think about how we can reduce our energy consumption, how we can use renewable energy on site. We look at our waste and recycling and circular economy practices through procurement. It's also about thinking about the campus as a natural environment as well. So looking at the biodiversity of the campus and how we can support and enhance the biodiversity of the campus when possible. The fourth one is around responsible investment, and this was a key one that students asked us to respond to, working on, responsible investment is the fourth goal, and this is something that students really wanted us to respond to, ensuring that the university's endowment fund was fossil fuel free. So that's something that we've been working on as one of the 6 key goals. Reporting and communications is the 5th goal, and that's really about making sure that we're transparent in the information that we're providing to staff and students around the sustainability journey, and you'll find a lot of that on the sustainability website. We report our carbon emissions every year, so you'll be able to see how we're tracking. And I've also got a traffic light list of the targets that are in the strategy, so you can see which ones have been achieved, which ones are still in train, and which ones are still needing to be delivered on. And the last one, the sixth one, is around governance, so making sure that right across the university we have representation from all the areas that are responsible for delivering on the targets, meeting together to make sure that everything's going smoothly, and reporting up to our Vice-Chancellor's executive to make sure that they have oversight and visibility of what we're doing. So as part of that, we've established the Sustainability Steering Committee, and that includes senior members of staff that are responsible for delivering on targets in the strategy.
That's really interesting to know that the university has such key goals. Could you walk us through some of the major sustainable practices the university has implemented on campus?
Of course. The university's been working on improving the sustainability of our campus since 2008, so there's a lot that we've achieved in that time. So I might just pick a few things to mention, otherwise I'll bore you intensely. So we've introduced a consistent recycling system across all university buildings to help us reduce waste from landfill. The university was also a key first mover in the state to remove single-use plastics from the food and beverages that are made on campus. So we ran a campaign a few years ago called Compostables on Campus, where we introduced public place organics recycling, and we spoke with all of our retailers about switching to compostable packaging so that when you have a coffee or you have something to eat on campus, the whole thing can go into the green bin as well as your food scraps, and that really improves our recycling rate. We've also been working to improve the energy efficiency of our campus buildings. So we have initiated lighting retrofits to swap to LED technology, rooftop solar panels that we've installed, and sort of smart building technology so that sensors, lighting sensors, occupancy sensors, things like that to make the buildings a little bit smarter, so we're not running the air conditioning or the lights when we don't need to be. We also have 2 edible gardens. I'm not sure if people are aware, but if you aren't at Waite or Roseworthy, you might not have seen them. So these gardens are available for staff and students with green thumbs that would like to maybe add some ingredients to their lunch, or might like to pick some ingredients to take home and cook.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
We've also installed 2 large rainwater tanks at the Waite campus to collect rainwater to reuse for irrigation. And we hosted our first carbon neutral certified event on campus last year. That was called the Here for Good event. And as I mentioned, we've also established our Sustainability Steering Committee. So all those initiatives are probably just a few highlights for me personally across, I guess, a long period of time.
All right. I definitely did not know about the edible gardens. That sounds like such an interesting concept. Just moving forward, what are some of the specific projects and initiatives that have had more impact in making the campus a more environmentally friendly place?
So as I mentioned previously, we've retrofitted campus buildings with over 3,000 LED lights. We've also installed over 2 megawatts of on-site renewable energy. So you might see campus rooftops with solar panels on them, but we've also got a Roseworthy solar farm where we've got 2 large batteries that interact with the solar farm to store and release energy as the campus needs it. And that solar farm is producing around 42% of the campus's energy needs every year.
That's amazing. Wow.
It's fantastic. We've also taken our landfill diversion rate from 12% in 2012 to now well over 40%. So we're doing well on all those fronts. I'd like to be more ambitious, but it's a journey.
All right. And how do these sustainability efforts align with the broader environmental goals that we have, like reducing carbon footprints and addressing climate change? You already spoke a little bit about carbon footprints. If you could elaborate more on that, maybe.
Absolutely. So since 2010, the university has reduced its emissions by over 50%. And while a large portion of this is somewhat due to the state's, it's called the greening of the grid. So as renewable energy enters the state's grid, our emission factor goes down. So there's a bit of accounting magic that happens. But overall, we've reduced our footprint by over 50% in the operational space. Now, if you think about that, the makeup of what that footprint looks like, almost half of that operational carbon footprint is related to energy consumption. So this is really an area where we need to focus in terms of not only reducing the amount of energy we use on campus, but also where we source our energy from. So at the moment, even though 2 megawatts of renewable energy on site sounds absolutely fantastic, and don't get me wrong, it is, we're really pulling our weight in that respect, it still makes up less than 5% of our total energy consumption. So we need to look outside the university and look for procurement solutions where we can tap into other people that have larger size renewable systems such as solar and wind, and purchase that via the grid. And this procurement strategy is something that many organisations and universities use to reduce their carbon footprint, and it's something that we're actively looking at the moment. And I just wanted to give you a sense of also our performance across the GO8. The GO8 is a group of universities that are research intensive, if you like. And across the GO8 in Australia, the University of Adelaide performs really well in terms of our energy consumption. So we use, in terms of the energy we use per square metre of floor space, if you can think about it like that, we're actually second in Australia for doing that well. So I think it's really important to benchmark ourselves against other universities that have, similar building stock and really look at this. Of course, there'll be seasonal variations because we're in different states, but it's really interesting when you start comparing. And when we look at how much energy consumption per student that we have on site, we are third out of the 8. So we're doing very well in that respect as well.
Yeah, all right. And speaking about it's really nice to hear that our university is ranking higher in the group of 8 in all these different areas. But are there some challenges that the university has been facing in implementing sustainable practices on campus? And how do you think we can overcome these challenges?
So in sustainability, some of the challenges are technical and some of them are cultural. And this is the space that we need to navigate. I'll give you a few examples of each. So, for example, we have a relatively older building stock here at the North Terrace campus. And so some of our older buildings are more costly or more difficult to retrofit than a newer building. So a number of our older buildings have tiled roofs, and when we want to install solar panels on the roof, the building can't handle the weight of those tiles plus the solar panels. It's also really hard to maintain a roof that's tiled with solar panels on it. It's not impossible, some people do it, but for us it means that we need to actually remove the tiles, place a corrugated iron roof on, and then install the solar panels. So it adds cost to the project. So I'd say cost is probably one of the challenges that we have. We know that the intensity of climate change will increase, and so we need to do what we can now to rapidly adapt our campus and our buildings so that we respond to that really well. But we might not have access to the finance to be able to do that. So that's probably one of the challenges. And the other one that I wanted to speak to you about is kind of cultural. So I remember when we first introduced our recycling program, and many people on the campus were concerned about the additional time that it was going to take to walk to a recycling station than just to have a bin under their desk that they could pop their waste into. So we were really careful and thought through how people were going to move through the building, and we made sure that our recycling stations were placed in locations where it was really convenient. So people would take their waste with them when they were walking through well-travelled routes through the campus, when they're getting up to make a cup of tea or walking to a meeting room. And I think over time we were able to overcome these kind of cultural challenges and fear that it was going to take more time, and it just became the norm. And I think that's one of the interesting things about sustainability, because once we create ways that are different but they're normal ways, they become normal ways of working or living, and that's the kind of cultural change that we need to see happen. Things like riding your bike to work or catching the bus, those things are easy for most of us to do daily, but it might just take a step change to move out of our previous patterns of behaviour and try something a little bit new before it becomes a new norm.
That is so relatable when you say that, because we want the best and we want to achieve the best in this area, but as for a layman, a normal person living their normal day-to-day life, what is the incentive for them to go out of their way to do something, which will of course bring benefit to them, of course, but in the beginning you have to give it to them in ways where they're not even realizing that they're being better or living a better life, just doing the things they're doing every day. And the placement of the bins especially is one such way where it's really succeeded. Now it's like second nature. It's like it comes to you naturally, right, to just do something and recycle your waste. But yeah. And speaking about the challenges, you mentioned the financial issues that we might be facing. So are there any partnerships with local businesses or government bodies that help further these sustainability goals?
There are some grants available that the university has been able to access. So the university received some grant funding for our solar farm at Roseworthy, which was excellent. And we're always on the lookout for funding opportunities. So if any students out there that knows of one, please contact me. But the university is a founding member of the SA0 cluster. So this is a group of large organisations in South Australia who are actively working to decarbonise their operations. And so we share from others in this group and discuss possible collaborations. The cluster's been going for about 12 months now, and we've seen lots of very helpful information sharing. And we're talking about cross-sector here. So we're an education institution. We're talking to people that run ports, banks, mining areas. So we're really, it's fascinating to see how each of the different industries are responding. And I guess the good thing is, and the key message is, that they're all responding. So everyone's moving towards a net zero future and a green economy. It's just we're doing it in different ways because we operate in different sectors. We also collaborate really closely with other universities across Australia. So the university has been members of the Australasian Campuses Towards Sustainability, or ACTS, network since 2010. And I'm currently working on 2 collaborative projects with this group. The first one's around supply chain emissions accounting, and the other one is on key risks and opportunities that climate change will present in the future to the higher education sector. I'm also chair of the Geo8 Sustainability Forum. So as I mentioned before, we're typically large universities with research-intensive facilities that require significant energy consumption, so things like refrigeration, fume cupboards, and pressurised labs. So we share the strategies that we're employing to decarbonise our campuses, and because we are in the same sector, it's very relatable and a fantastic network.
Early on in our chat, you mentioned how you want the sustainability strategy to reach all students. You want the sustainability strategy to reach all students, regardless of which faculty or what type of study they're pursuing. And in that sense, how do you think that students and staff can be encouraged to participate or to contribute to these strategies?
From a student perspective, there are some fantastic clubs to get involved with. So there's the Adelaide Sustainability Association, or the ASA, the Bio Society, Geography and Development Society, and the SDG Hub. So that would be probably the first places to look at. Also, if you have an interest in fashion, the Adelaide Fashion Collective Club also have an interest in the impacts of fast fashion. So that might be a club of interest. And then depending on what you're studying, there are also student clubs that support sustainable development within particular disciplines. So we've got a club that's Engineers Without Borders and the Society of Architecture and Built Environment. So lots of opportunities there. On the staff front, we've got some fantastic institutes for those that are in research. So we've got the Environment Institute, the Institute of Sustainability, Energy and Resources, and the Waite Research Institute. So these institutes provide a network for staff to share and collaborate on their research projects. But I think one of the biggest roles that staff can play is using the university's purchasing power wisely. So I don't know if you guys have heard about the author Anna Lappe, but she says, every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for the kind of world you want. And I think that's really important for the university staff to consider, do we really need these things? Could we borrow? Could we share? Who are we choosing to buy from, and what are their sustainability credentials? How can we repurpose or recycle these items at the end of their life? So I think as staff consider their role and what they have influence over, I think that's a really important thing for staff to consider. And of course, everyone's encouraged to participate in the edible gardens that I mentioned. There's also facilities on campus for walking and cycling, recycling facilities, and please read the signs when you go to use the recycling bins. I know it I know I sound silly talking to people about this all the time, but we do get contamination in the recycling bins, and it's just because people didn't read the signs. So read the signs. You can also bring your own coffee cups and water bottles to campus. We've got places for you to wash, rinse, and refill your water bottles. And heat up your leftovers, so don't waste food. Bring whatever you had for dinner last night to campus and heat it up in the microwave. It's easy, it's cheap, and it's tasty. Yeah.
And what role do you feel the student-led initiatives play in advancing the university's sustainability agenda?
Quite a lot. So when we were developing the sustainability strategy, we consulted widely with staff and students, and the one thing that we heard over and over again from student voices was they wanted us to divest from fossil fuels. And so that's been a high priority and a significant focus of work for the university since the strategy was developed. We have some really good news coming our way in relation to that, so all I can say for the moment is stay tuned. But students had a lot of influence over that in particular.
And what are the next steps for the university in terms of improving sustainability?
Well, I guess the elephant in the room is about the merger, right?
Yeah.
So this strategy was due to run until 2030, and of course it's been cut short by the merger. So we had 42 targets that we were going to meet. 8 of those we delivered last year, and we plan to deliver 9 more before the merger hits us. So I might just talk briefly to some of those. As I mentioned, we're working on divesting endowment fund from fossil fuels, so that's a key priority, and we hope to be able to announce something soon on that. We're also planning to achieve net zero emissions from directly controlled operations by 2025. and divert all food waste from landfill and achieve at least a 50% overall waste diversion rate by 2025. So there are just some key targets that we're still planning to meet before the merger. It's a shame that we didn't get to run with the strategy as it was invented. However, I think it's important to be agile, and also there's an opportunity there, right? Because Adelaide University will have staff and students from UniSA, and they can support us and maybe help accelerate some of these goals that we have as well. So I think I'm looking forward to working together with the other university. And I think it's also important to step back and think about when we're creating a new university that's future focused and placed in a state where we're world leading on the renewable energy transition and circular economy. That's a fantastic backbone for whatever sustainability strategy comes next.
And how's the university, well, the Adelaide University, I guess, planning to adapt and how's the university planning to adapt to the evolving challenges of the climate change in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's a really good question, and something that I'm working on with my colleagues across the higher ed sector at the moment, as I mentioned before. But some of the considerations that I'm thinking about are the physical impacts on campus infrastructure. So, and how we can make our campuses more resilient to increasing weather conditions. So things like increasing shade, introducing water-sensitive urban design systems, passive cooling, and how can we be more self-sufficient in terms of our energy consumption. Also thinking about when we host events on campus, do we need more shade, more water points? Do we need to plan for bad weather? And what does that look like? The impact of increasing natural disasters on staff and students. So I think it's important to think about how our research and our teaching can operate when our staff and students might also be responding to natural disasters in their local communities, and how the university might be able to support them in that. And then if we, in the very far future, if we have an influx of climate refugees from other countries that might like to come and study with us, you know, how do we find them appropriate housing? Or we might have international students that might not be able to get to us due to the impacts of climate change. So I think it's about considering how, as a university, we still provide a high quality learning experience for people that might be coming and going from Australia as a result of climate change.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I think it's been such an enriching episode just listening to you talk. But I have one last question for you. What advice would you give to students who are passionate about sustainability but are unsure where to start?
I would say make it your profession and get paid for it. So the world needs more people that are passionate about sustainability to help solve these really complex problems. And like I said before, it doesn't really matter what you're studying here at university. There will be opportunities to make a difference and to help communities adapt to climate change. And so while you're at uni, you can utilise your work experience opportunities to explore and hang out with like-minded people in your profession, and also connect with people through clubs, because you'll often find like-minded students from different faculties that are trying to solve, might be wanting to solve these problems as well. So it's really, I think it's fantastic when we are cross-disciplinary in our approach. And like I said before, the challenges are often technical and cultural, and so we need a variety of minds around the room that have different skill sets to help solve these problems.
Thank you so much.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Happy to.
Wow, that was an incredible discussion. So many insightful points.
Absolutely. I was particularly struck by how the university's sustainability efforts align with global environmental goals.
Yes, and how they are not just focusing on the infrastructure, but also on engaging students and staff.
And it's empowering to know that as students, we can actively participate through various initiatives.
Definitely, whether it's joining an eco club, participating in sustainability research, or simply adopting greener habits.
It reminds us that it's never too late to start making a difference, both individually and institutionally. So, to our listeners, we hope today's episode has inspired you to think about how you can contribute to sustainability. There's no better moment than the present to begin making these sustainable choices.
Yeah, maybe it's starting with small changes, like using a reusable water bottle or turning off lights when you leave a room.
Or perhaps even getting involved with sustainability initiatives on campus or in your local community.
Every action, no matter how small, contributes to a larger impact.
And remember, sustainability isn't just a buzzword, it's a way of life that ensures a better future for all of us.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Proverbial Perspectives. Signing off is Yarni and
Simran.
bye.